So, breaking news, the government has given the go-ahead to this controversial super Chinese embassy in the old Royal Mint building. In the studio with us is Lord Kempsell, Conservative peer. He's off to China next week. This is the timing, clearly, the Prime Minister. Conservative Party completely opposed to this. What do you make of this decision?
It's flabbergasting. And basically, Keir Starmer came in saying his priority was to serve the people in Britain, but all he's doing at the moment, it seems, from a variety of decisions, whether it's on the Chinese MEGA-EMBASSY or it's on Chagos, is he's serving up the best week ever for Xi Jinping and for Vladimir Putin.
So people are clear, what is the problem? Tell us about the cables which the underground chambers, the underground rooms in this embassy will be close to, the proximity of these underground cables. What's contained in these cables?
Well, Andrew, all across this area, which is just outside the City of London, there are vital data cables for financial information that enables trading in the city. And there are also sensitive communication cables that are very important to business and so on. I think the reality with this this piece of breaking news is that there's going to be a JR. So, you know, the local residents, exactly, the local residents are very upset with this decision, notwithstanding the political reaction. So even though the plans as they are have been approved, and remember that quite a good deal of those plans
redacted. Yeah, we never saw it.
Exactly. So the public haven't really seen the full details of the planning documents. There's going to be a judicial review. So I think this will have quite a long way to run yet.
Ross, there's no secret that the Chinese are engaged in espionage in the West, not least in London. But isn't the problem now that in the UK we are so beholden to the Chinese economically, for investments? I mean, look at, for example, Xi, who bought British Steel. I mean, they threatened to withdraw their £1 billion investment if the government didn't approve this embassy, which just shows how closely linked China's economic ties are with the Chinese Communist Party. What can we do about it?
I think behind the whole impetus from the government is that Starmer knows he's desperate to get GDP growth up in the UK. And one of his strategies, he thinks, is to just have a very open economic relationship with China. I think that's how he's coming at this. He thinks that this is a shortcut to boosting growth. The reality is, though, at what cost? And I firmly think that the UK does need to have a relationship with China. I mean, notwithstanding anything else, 1 in 5 people in the world are Chinese. The Chinese government is a major player in world affairs, in multilateral organisations. But having a relationship with China is not the same thing as letting China exert its influence and do whatever it wants in the UK. That's not the way the UK should be acting. You know, as a patriotic government, the UK should be putting the UK's national interests first.
And Kemi Babe not told us she spoke to the American speaker who's here. She spoke to him only last night. There was a dinner for him in Speaker's House, Mike Johnson, who made it clear the Americans are horrified, aghast, as are 4 or 5 other major allies, that this could go ahead because they think it's going to be used for Chinese spying. I was speaking to a number of US sources yesterday who are very close to the administration, having a couple of calls last night, and I can tell you that perhaps even more so than Chagos, the US concern over the Chinese MEGA-EMBASSY is right at the top of the agenda in that relationship. And I think Starmer is really risking overall the solidity of the US-UK alliance, which after all is the major plank of our international security relationships. And you can take exception to the individual actions of a president. You don't have to agree with everything a single administration does. And actually, there are things that the UK government has done and will continue to do that the White House doesn't always agree with. But the reality is, away from the personalities, the core of that relationship is absolutely fundamental to the security of Western democracies.
Well, one current area of disagreement is over the Chagos Islands deal, something that you, I know, have opposed, and many in the House of Lords. And yet, until today, we thought that the Trump administration was going to support, or at least not oppose, the selling or giving away of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. Trump's changed his mind.
Well, President Trump says that the deal is now stupid. And in my view, that means that the deal simply can't go ahead.
Is it a veto?
I think it is an effective veto, and I'll explain exactly why. Even though the UK and Mauritius have signed a bilateral treaty, and that is the deal that Starmer refers to, the reality is that the US was not a party in that bilateral treaty. The treaty also hasn't been ratified. It's still in Parliament. It's coming back to the House of Commons today and to the House of Lords on Monday. So the process isn't completed on the UK side. The US has an effective veto because the Diego Garcia military base is a joint US-UK base. If the President of the United States has decided now that he doesn't support the deal, I don't think there's very much that Keir Starmer can do about it. Indeed, the former Foreign Secretary David Lammy himself said very openly that if President Trump doesn't support the deal, there's no deal. So I think for all intents and purposes, the deal is now dead.
So that's going to change. There could be dramas in the Commons today when it comes back to the Commons this afternoon.
There will be, and I've put down a urgent question in the House of Lords today to try to get ministers from Labour to come and answer what their plan is now that the US has withdrawn support. For those of us who followed it in Parliament, there have been many, many occasions where Labour ministers have stood up at the dispatch box and said, this deal is going ahead because the US supports it. And now, whatever you think of the dynamics and the way that President Trump communicates, there's now no doubt that he no longer supports it.
And why do you think that the Labour government have done this? Is it guilt over our colonial past? Is it as simplistic as that?
I think it's partially a misplaced guilt over that. The way that the UK acted in the administration of the Chagos Islands and the forced removal of Chagosians was wrong.
Yeah.
But two wrongs don't make a right. And this deal is essentially wrong because Chagosians themselves say that we don't want to be governed by Mauritius. In fact, the Chagosians I've been speaking through the course of this campaign, they're some of the most patriotic, pro-UK voices that there are in the UK today. Many of them were already here. They're British citizens. Some of them have served in the UK armed forces. You know, their record is completely, without any criticism when it comes to their patriotism and their support for the UK. And I think, frankly, from Labour, it's a staggering policy. Labour has come in and said, it's going to right all the wrongs of the past, but it's falling into a massive trap here by creating a huge new wrong that will be very difficult to unwind. Now, thankfully, President Trump has come in, as a lot of us thought that he would do, all the way through this process. There's been a lot of conversations going on in DC. There's been a lot of trips. A lot of it's been going on under the radar to make our case to the US administration. And I think, whatever the circumstances with Greenland, the reality is that as far as international negotiations are concerned, these are different issues. And Trump has now put the brakes on.
Certainly has. Well, fascinating. Lord Kempsell.
Yes, thank you very much. Isn't it crazy, Andrew, that we have to appeal to a foreign power to preserve our own national interest against our own government?
But also, we were going to pay Mauritius £35 billion. This is a country that's reeling from a cost of living crisis.
And at the same time, that same foreign power seems to be blowing apart NATO.
It does.
So who knows where we'll be tomorrow, Andrew?
Indeed. Panel are back. We have Piers Pottinger, no stranger to this programme, and my old sparring partner, Kevin Maguire, who is one half of the Piers versus Maguire podcast.
The better half.
Well, you might say that. You would say that. I'll let you have that small cheap point if you insist. Let's talk about China and the Chinese embassy. Yeah. The Prime Minister is going to China next week, Piers. This had to be signed off.
This was so predictable. Yes.
Right. Do you think it's a terrible mistake?
Well, I think it is, probably. Because now it appears, again, we go back to America, saying that they're worried about it. They have serious security concerns. We apparently have looked at it. Yeah. But this whole thing has been going on since 2018. And even in 2018, the Labour borough of Tower Hamlets, not normally people I would stand up for, but in their wisdom, they rejected the planning permission. It was called in. And then Angela Rayner, again, not someone I'd normally support, postponed the decision because of the concerns. And then I think it was Rachel Reeves went to China and did some sort of deal that, again, one of these trade deals we've never seen anything of. And she, I think, when she was there, or it was Jonathan Powell, quietly said, of course, we're going to let you have the embassy.
Jonathan Powell, who's the Prime Minister's Foreign Affairs advisor.
And the problem is our embassy in Beijing, when the Chinese don't like what we're saying about them, they tinker around with the water and energy supply and make life miserable for our diplomats in Beijing, which is incidentally quite a small number. The thing is, this embassy is way out of proportion to the number of Chinese living in Britain. It's also by far the biggest embassy in Europe. And it's not just us. The Netherlands, Denmark, Switzerland even, neutral old Switzerland, have raised security concerns. I think China is a national security threat. There is no question. And I would not be allowing them to have this vast It's not an embassy, it's a barracks, it's a fortress, and it's also there for spying.
And Kevin, my worry about it as well, until the Daily Telegraph got hold of the detailed plans, everything that was going underground was redacted. The plan,
but the government knew. It's just it wasn't publicly available.
Yeah, but why can't we all see it?
Yeah, well, no, look, I'm always
the planning process is supposed to be about transparency.
I'm always in favour of openness and transparency on that. But the government knew because it had seen the plans. It was said it was on security issues, so people who want to attack the embassy won't know that. China's got a terrible human rights record. It's a dictatorship, unquestionably. It's also the world's second largest economy, soon to be the world's largest economy. And it's how do you deal with that? They want this great statement embassy on that old Royal Mint site. It's just to the North Tower Bridge, the Tower of London. They're making a big statement with it. I think the security aspect has been massively overblown because the spooks have nodded it through. All this stuff about cables, that's not how you spy on us. You don't get some old crocodile clips on some cables. If you're going to do that, you go to the data centres, where it's coming through. So all that's a bit nonsense.
So why have 5 of our allies objected to it?
Because they always object in a way. You say, we'll object to all sorts around the world. Because say, what are your objections? It's how you decide whether something is safe to be approved. You say, what are the downsides? That's what you do.
Isn't this about the Prime Minister kowtowing to one of the worst world leaders, President Xi, before he goes next week?
The last government would have approved this. I bet you Kemi Badenoch would have approved it if she was in Downing Street. Even Nigel Farage if he was in Downing Street.
Well, you Mystic Meg.
Because Mystic Mag, please, as Maguire, if you don't mind. But of course they would do it because you don't want to annoy the Chinese. I mean, that's the truth of it on an embassy.
International diplomacy about more than that, than annoying the Chinese.
Well, I mean, it sleeps 200 people. There are 200 rooms for people to sleep in. That's above ground, as well as facilities for people to spend a lot of time underground, which is the sinister aspect of it, in some sort of bunker. I mean, the thing is, it's emblematic of our relationship with China. And again, it's one of those things where we are weak and China is strong. And we have to let them have this embassy because otherwise they'd fool around with our embassy and cause us problems. They've made it very clear. I mean, the interesting thing, as Kevin hit upon, is China's human rights are probably the worst in the world. And you don't hear much from people like Amnesty International about the persecution of the Uyghurs.
No.
Probably one of the worst things in the world. Well, no one seems to do anything about it.
Well, they're in concentration
No one ever
camps,
stands up to these people. And the more we give in to China on the basis of, I mean, we must never put the defence of our realm ahead of trade deals ahead of the defence of our realm. And putting trade with China ahead of defending ourselves
you
is
say
wrong.
trade, but the truth is that just we were talking the last hour about our economic dependence on the United States. We're also extremely economically dependent on the Chinese. And
I'm afraid it shows just how insignificant this country has become.
Well, we're a middling power. We've got to accept that. And what it's emblematic of is gone are the days when in the 19th century we could send gunboats and soldiers to burn down Chinese palaces because they wouldn't buy our heroin from India.
Not our finest hour.
No, it's certainly not. The colonial past is kind of still being cleaned up.
I think this is all still revenge for the Opium Wars, personally.
Yeah.